Reviewing all of the Trump nominees with William Wolfe. Stick around.
Exploring theology, doctrine, and all of the fascinating subjects in between, broadcasting from an undisclosed location, Dead Men Walking starts
now.
Well, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Dead Men Walking Podcast. I'm your host, Greg. Nice to see you guys. Thanks for checking out DMWpodcast.com. Thanks for following us on social media. Dead Men Walking Podcast, X, Twitter, all the places, Facebook, Instagram, you know where it's at. Man, what a week. Appreciate you guys telling a friend too, man. We're growing by leaps and bounds, which means you guys like the content we're bringing you. I appreciate you stopping in and hanging out with us. Look, there are so many podcasts out there. Even if you take the sliver of like Reformed Christian podcasts, there's thousands, right? I think there's 2.8 million worldwide or 3 million worldwide. So the fact that you're here, we appreciate it. Before we get into this, though, we got to talk about Dominion Wealth Strategist, Josiah and Justin. Love these guys. The only distinctly reformed financial company, full service financial planning and wealth management. Look at guys, there's a Dominion mandate out there. Let's be stewards of our wealth. Let's create wealth. Let's build businesses. Let's be wise in how we leave wealth to our families. These guys know how to do it. They do personal, business, and church finances, budgeting, debt management, savings, life and health insurance, retirement planning, estate planning, business services. They do it all. So let's place our money with Christians, not degenerates. I love their motto, all of Christ for all of life, all of finance for all of Christendom. You can book a meeting with them at www.reformed.money or just click the link below in this episode that you're watching or listening to. From baptism to burial, Dominion has you covered. Also, guys, we got a special little Christmas bonus for you right now. Our good friend Andrew Rappaport has a book out called What Do We Believe? This is a nice hardcover edition here. Right now, for all Dead Men Walking listeners, free shipping. I think the book is $15. You get free shipping. Great stocking stuffer. There's a limited supply of these. If you've got a family member or a friend that goes, what do you believe? This is a very easy read, but also very theologically thorough. Clear, defined. What are the Christian tenets? Andrew Rappaport did a great job on this. What do we believe? Link below. Click on it. Free shipping for all you guys. So flat $15, get you this book. You can get it in time for Christmas. Great stocking stuffer over there from Andrew Rappaport and Striving for Eternity Ministries. Cool. Guys, we had a good one this episode. We had on William Wolfe, which William served as a senior official in the Trump administration, both as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense at the Pentagon and Director of Legislative Affairs at the Department of State. He was there for almost 4 years with Trump in his first term. So we had to have him back on with Trump going back in office next month. Hopefully, if he makes it to the inauguration, I kind of say that facetiously, but also not. There's been a lot of obstacles in his way. There's people who do not want to see him become president. What we did is we had William on and as our resident Trump administration expert and, may have some connections with him moving into this second term for Trump. I'm not speaking on behalf of him or anything like that, but I would see him working in some capacity within the administration at higher up levels. It was good to have him back in here. His first time to the podcast. I've done some live streams with him and stuff like that over at Cross Politic, but just an extremely knowledgeable guy. He's kind of our insider, one of the insiders I have to Washington, D.C. and what's going on there. And we just went down the list. I said, what do you think of these Trump nominees? We talked about FBI Director Kash Patel, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, which she's not an appointee. She doesn't get confirmed by the Senate, but kind of we went with his staff and nominees. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Attorney General Pam Bondi. We talked about the Doge stuff. We talked about RFK. We talked about Elon Musk and what he's going to do and how he can transition from the private sector into the public and political sector. It was a good one. And it's funny because I just messaged a friend of the podcast and said, you know what? I think William Wolfe, the first time in almost 5 years doing this podcast, was a guest that could match my speed and efficiency in both speaking and thought. I mean, we got 2.5 hours worth of information in a 42-minute podcast. It was pretty amazing. You just turn the switch for William Wolfe. He rivals how I talk or how I move or how I think. I mean, I was just throwing questions at him. He didn't even really know what we were going to talk about. I just said, hey, Trump nominees. I was throwing out names. He had facts. He knew stuff. Probably one of the most knowledgeable guys that I know. Also, he's, come on, he's Reformed Baptist, so we love him there too, right? Not only is he conservative in policy, but also, Reformed in his theology, which we love. So, I mean, he was rattling off. He was giving us inside scoops, giving us inside information, background information on some of these nominees. Then we moved down and talked to, at the end of the show, about what the second Trump term is going to look like compared to the first. Will it be a continuation of the first? Is Trump going to not be so, when I say conservative, I don't mean in the political sense. I mean in kind of being easy about what he does and doesn't do? Or is he just going to go, hey, this is my agenda and this is what we're doing? Is it going to be, looking to 2028, making sure we're setting up a Republican nominee well for 2028? So we talked about that towards the end of the episode. Probably the last 10, 15 minutes of that was looking into the future there. But man, what an awesome episode. William Wolfe, he's welcome back anytime on the podcast, because honestly, it's one of those guests that are very easy lifting for me. I mean, you give him a question, you ask something, you talk about a subject, and he just goes, man, and he gives you information upon information. It's all solid. Most of it's top of head stuff where it's like, man, this guy just lives and breathes it and he's in on it. So we appreciate him being on the podcast. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this episode as much as I did. Like I said, a lot packed in to that 42 minutes or so that we spoke. So yeah, not too much from here from me. I think we'll have, if you're watching this right now, it should be about a week before Christmas. Don't know what we're doing for Christmas yet. Might do a live stream. Well, I know I'm going to do a live stream. Don't know the date. So it'll be sometime between the 19th and the 24th, somewhere in there. And going to have a bunch of special guests on. A lot of people you guys probably know or heard of or listened to. A couple big guests will pop in. But just watch the socials for that. Watch Twitter X. Watch Facebook, watch Instagram. I'll push out that date for you when we're going to do that live stream, that special Christmas live stream we do every year. And we'll have fun with it. It'll be a good time. And we hope to see you on that. You guys can participate. We'll take questions. Heck, even if you're in the live stream, you got a camera and a good mic, let me know, man. And who knows, maybe you even pop up on the live stream. You can be on a podcast, talk to everyone, hang out with us. We love our listeners. All right, guys. That's all I got for you. Next thing you'll hear is me and William Wolfe talking Trump nominees. Here we go. William, so thanks for being on the Dead Men Walking podcast. Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah, so first time on Dead Men Walking. I know we've done some stuff live with Cross Politic, and you were involved in the first Trump administration a little bit, weren't you?
Yeah, that's right. I was in it for almost all 4 years. I worked at the Department of State and the Department of Defense as a political appointee.
Yeah, I'd call that a little bit then.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hey, I wanted to have you on today because we're moving into a second Trump term, divided by a Biden administration. We had that crazy fun election for the Trump supporters, not so fun for the crazy leftists that are still melting down and now having to recant and retract and work with a Nazi terrorist, as they said, before the election.
Right.
And I say that in jest. But I just kind of wanted to get your kind of perspective on some of the Trump appointees, since you were in the administration before. I'm guessing, I'm not throwing anything out there, but might have some connection to the second Trump administration going forward. And we'll see how that unfolds. But would you mind if we just kind of went through some of the names that have been thrown up there? And if you have an opinion on them or give an opinion on them, or if you don't know anything about them, you just say no, move on. Would that be okay?
That sounds great.
I think it brings some value to the listeners too, to have a perspective from someone like yourself. So I got to talk about right up top, the FBI director or the nominee. These are all nominees, obviously, when I refer to them, still pending confirmation. Kash Patel, just because I had seen some stuff. I wasn't too familiar with him, but I knew, he had went on some podcasts and said some really I would say brazen to most people, to people who want to see transparency in the government, not too brazen, but a guy who came on months ago and basically said, look, we need to open the Diddy files. We need to open the Epstein files. We need to look at JFK. We need to, there needs to be transparency in the FBI. And lo and behold, Trump comes in and goes, yeah, let's nominate him. I think this is probably for me, one of my favorite nominations. What do you think about him? Do you think he'll be effective?
Well, yeah, I think he absolutely will be effective. And I'm sure he's already striking fear into the heart of the deep state and the FBI. That sound you hear is the sound of thousands of documents being illegally shredded in Washington, D.C. right now as they fear his confirmation. But, Kash Patel is really the right man for the job. He's a lawyer by background and training. He has experience working at both the DOD and in the Office of National Intelligence. And this is really important in terms of supporting Donald Trump in the fight against the deep state. He worked as the lead investigator in the House on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, which was chaired by Adam Schiff and then by Devin Nunes and then Adam Schiff during Trump's administration. And that's really where the heart of all the Russia Gate collusion was being, promulgated between these bad actors in Congress and the FBI, Trump, Obama's appointees, et cetera. And so he was the one who uncovered a lot of that malfeasance in particular. I mean, eventually they found that the FBI was counter spying as they were seeking to hold them accountable, which is their job. The FBI started investigating Devin Nunes, Kash Patel, and others, et cetera. So he has seen firsthand what the corruption in our national security agencies look like, how they weaponize certain aspects of the law in order to get their way and spy on innocent Americans, the way they craft narratives, with selective, releases and leaks of bits and pieces of a story here and there. So, I mean, look, he is the right guy. I mean, he wrote a book called Government Gangsters. If you don't want a guy who wrote a book called Government Gangsters running the FBI, I don't know what you want.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing too, and I'll follow that up with something. We hear this kind of narrative from the left and from mainstream media of, everything's good. We don't want crazy, wild people in administrative positions. When you do a national Pew Research poll, 78% of Americans say we need more transparency, especially in the FBI. Trump has been accused of being a populist candidate. Sometimes I go, yeah, that kind of works to my advantage, though, because we have the majority of the population on our side when it comes to common sense governmental issues. It's just we've been lied to for years and years by the mainstream media and by elitist, small leftist segment that go, oh, no, we don't want any change. Everything's good. So I look at that and I say, you've got the majority of Americans going, yeah, we need some reform in the FBI, not just conservatives, not just Republicans, not just right, but there's independents, moderates, left-leaning centrists that go, yeah, that's a good pick. And it's really funny to me because it kind of just flies in the face of that elitist kind of idea of, oh no, everything's fine and we've got the country with us. We really are seeing a shifting, especially right now, especially in the six to eight last months of even kind of the independents and even the center left kind of being emboldened a little bit and going, okay, I can see how this could be good for the country. So I agree with you. I think that pick is exciting and I hope he does well in that position. White House Chief of Staff, first female Chief of Staff, I believe I read somewhere. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know anything about her. I don't think a lot of people do. She's not really a public figure. Susie Wiles. Do you have any information on her or any insight on her, or is this one we're going to have to wait and see?
Yeah, I can give a couple comments, but let me make one more comment about Kash Patel and the FBI real quick here.
Sure.
And that's this, is that I think the most important thing that people need to be aware of and excited about with a pick like Patel is that he is going to shatter this false myth of independence and neutrality at the FBI, right? So FBI directors actually get 10-year terms. And the idea was that they would transcend the presidential political fray and they would operate the FBI as if it's some sort of independent institution unaccountable to who? To nobody, right? When the truth is the Constitution vests all powers of the executive branch in the chief executive officer, who is the president of the United States. And so for Kash Patel to bring the FBI back under the control of the duly elected president for the next 4 years, which would be Donald Trump, and then hopefully maybe a Republican after that for 4 more years, while they pursue what arguably aren't, partisan reforms, but are true like truth seeking good reforms, it would really revolutionize what we're dealing with here in a good way. It'd be a counter revolution. It'd be reform. And so that's the most important thing there on Kash, is breaking this myth of the independent FBI and bringing it back under control of the president where it should be. On Susie Wiles, I don't know her personally at all. She's a longtime Republican operative. You know, she worked for Jack Kemp back in the day. She's been involved in Florida politics for a long time. She helped Trump on the 2016 campaign as well. And look, a lot of people credit her with sort of bringing a steady hand to the 2024 campaign, message discipline, which I think we saw Trump had in many ways that he maybe hadn't had in previous, campaigns 2016, 2020. And look, I love unscripted Trump, but this time around, message discipline really did seem to help him. Yeah. I've heard that she's very loyal. That's really important, right? I've heard from people who know her that she's loyal to the president. She's no nonsense, and she's willing to disagree with him. And then even when they disagree, when Trump says, no, this is what I want to do, she goes and does it, which having her as the chief of staff, if that is the role, if that is the posture she brings, would be a huge upgrade from the vast majority of the other chiefs of staff that we had during the first Trump administration until the very end there when we got somebody like Mark Meadows. Because what those chiefs of staff did was they would lyingly agree with Trump face to face, and then they turn around and go subvert his wishes and his will. A much more honest way to go about it is to say, well, actually, sir, Mr. President, I don't know if that's the best way to go about it, but if that's what you're telling me to do, I'm going to get it done. And I think that's how Susie Wiles is going to run the White House.
Yeah, that's very well said, because that is a stark difference between a leader and a chief of staff and not. Speaking of doing what you would like them to do, the Secretary of State nominee, Marco Rubio. Now, you got some conservative people that have a little heartburn with him still from years ago, the Gang of Six and kind of that fiasco. But at the same time, I understand Secretary of State has to be a stately representation of our country, as they're probably doing the most foreign travel. They're talking to dignitaries. In that sense, Marco Rubio is a statesman. What are your thoughts on that pick? And why do you think Trump went that route from little Marco, little Rubio, or whatever his nickname was, to, hey, one of the highest not nominated positions in the country, Secretary of State?
Yeah, well, I'm cautiously optimistic about the pick. I was not a Rubio fan when he ran in 2016. I was a Trump supporter even in the primary, and Rubio really did betray the conservative Republican base with his role in the Gang of Eight immigration amnesty bill. And he's understood to be cut a little bit more from the cloth of sort of a pro-interventionist, project power abroad, sort of neocon-ish, though he's certainly not a full dyed-in-the-wool neocon, I don't think. Look, a lot of people do have issues with him, so I'm not going to kind of try to work too hard to bend over backwards and defend him, but I will say this, is that, look, Marco Rubio is going to be leaving a comfortable, safe Senate seat to go take over the Department of State. In a job in which, if Donald Trump is displeased with his performance, he can tell him, you're fired at any time. And so I think that Rubio will be smart, and Rubio, again, regardless of whatever his personal opinions are, will implement the agenda of the president at the Department of State. And there are certainly other people that have filled out sort of the national security apparatus along with Rubio that have less hawkish inclinations that will have other voices at the table. So, I can see him being an effective and powerful America First Secretary of State, as long as he is duly implementing the president's agenda there, which I trust will happen. But let me take this opportunity to point something else out for your listeners. When we see these people put in at the top of these agencies, the cabinet secretary, the one that's affirmed by the Senate, there are others that are confirmed by the Senate too. But the truth is that underneath them will be dozens, if not hundreds, of other very important political appointees that won't have near the amount of spotlight, nor should they. And that's really where control of the agency for the president comes down to. So I hope at the State Department in particular to see a very strong, no nonsense, conservative fighter, America First type as the deputy secretary in particular, because they're the ones who really control the day-to-day operations of the building, while the Secretary of State is the figurehead who's out and about in other countries. So that kind of combination where we get, say, a Kash Patel type as the deputy secretary of state to work with a more statesman Marco Rubio, that's the combination I'm looking for real success here.
Yeah, you make a very good point. And for the listeners out there, these are kind of, I don't want to say figurehead appointments, but you're absolutely right. You sometimes in a department have thousands of others working towards a goal and really, yeah, ultimately reporting to the figurehead, to the president. But at the same time, yeah, you want the boots on the ground, the actual employees, the people who are carrying those out to be in line step with the president's agenda is. And you make a really good point too. I mean, from a political decision and in every aspect of the word, whether you think it's negative or positive, Rubio is a great politician. You just hope that when he's being that politician, commanding a room and things, he's going along with the ideas of or the agenda of the administration. But yeah, he left a very, very nice Senate seat. So there's a little pressure there. Look, you could be fired at any time. Just like you said, you bring up a great point. Not a lot of people talking about that. But for those like you or I, to a little extent, who's been involved in politics, state and national, you understand that there's a risk there. And he understands what he needs to do because he's leaving a Senate seat, which is not hard to come by, or that is hard to come by,
Yep.
So, yeah. So what about Pam Bondi? Out of Florida, Matt Gaetz had to withdraw or did withdraw. Attorney General. I don't know a whole lot about her. Everyone I talked to seems to really like her, think she was no nonsense. It's hard to follow every single state closely when I'm dealing with my own state and other things. I believe she was state attorney general in Florida. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. She was the Florida 37th Attorney General in Florida. She has a history as a prosecutor. So she was on the good side of the line, we hope, as long as you're doing the job right, putting bad guys away. And then, she's been a supporter of Donald Trump. And this is, I think, really kind of what led to this pick, is she was part of Donald Trump's 2020 legal team when he was fighting impeachment charges, that first Senate impeachment trial over the perfect phone call, right? When Donald Trump tried to investigate what Joe Biden just pardoned his son for and then ended up getting impeached for it, Pam Bondi was at the front line of his legal defense. And of course, look, this House ultimately, convicted him, controlled by Democrats, sham trial, sham process, ridiculous impeachment. But I think during that time, she won Trump's even closer trust. He saw her work, and then she also knows what she's up against. So again, so much of this comes down to, will they be loyal or not? I've seen some people raise some concerns with her on previous policy issues, and I could be getting this wrong. So, Pam Bondi, don't hold against me, but maybe some issues with her on like Second Amendment rights or something. But that said, I think that at the end of the day, if she's there to root out corruption in the Department of Justice, to back people like Kash Patel at the FBI and others, to get the Department of Justice off the backs of, conservative Christians around this country, pro-life voters, to help Donald Trump work through the process of pardoning J6 political prisoners. I mean, so on and so forth. There's so much reform that needs to be done to the Department of Justice. And I think that I trust Donald Trump. And that's at the end of the day, man, I trust Donald Trump, knows what he's doing, and he's made a great pick in Pam Bondi.
Yeah, you know what's going back to my earlier point too of most Americans being on board with this. Just recorded an episode with Sheriff Richard Mack, who is famous for challenging the Brady bill in the 90s, took it to the Supreme Court, won that decision with Scalia writing it. And he's a he would call himself an independent, and he's a Pam Bondi fan and a Kash Patel fan because he's a rule of law sheriff, and it's really getting back to that basic thing of who doesn't agree with having a transparent rule of law government. And it just seems to be a very small, extreme sliver on the left. With that being said, that's kind of why I'm just surprised why Robert F. Kennedy, being appointed HHS secretary. And I think we all saw that coming when he endorsed Trump, late in the run. The Democrats, if you're old enough to remember, 20 years ago, they were hey, what's in this vaccine? Hey, natural food. Hey, we don't need chemicals in our food. And they've totally flipped. Now you've got most of your conservatives and Republicans going, hey, maybe we should look at the chemicals in our food. Maybe we should do some testing on vaccines before we push it out and mandate it by the government. And the Democrats are just crucifying. Oh, he's not qualified. You take away his uncle and his dad. He's just a political figurehead. And you go, this guy has a very long history of really going in and saying, hey, big government, no, you can't take those wetlands. Hold on, those might be protected. Hey, big government, what's in that vaccine? Hey, big government, what's in our food? This isn't a fly-by-night guy. He's been doing this for 20 plus years. And now just because he's on Team Trump, he's been kind of shuttered by the left. And I kind of like this pick. He's got all the fame and stuff around him too, but just because he has a pretty good track record of being anti overreach of government, which is pretty crazy when you think about, him being in the Democratic Party and then being an independent. What do you think about this pick?
Yeah, well, so on your point about the way that Democrats have sort of totally reversed course on their position on health and medicine and natural food and things like that, it's really because they've adopted science as a dogmatic proposition and set of beliefs, and this really got baked in through the COVID era, right? For them to say anything like, well, maybe the vaccines aren't as safe as we've been told that they have been, is to essentially question holy dogma. You see it in these confessional signs they put on their lawns. In this house, we believe that science is real. It's like, well, who doesn't believe that science is real? But science is simply a process by which we investigate and try to explore what the truth is. And of course, when you pay off 9 out of 10 scientists aren't incorruptible to, support a certain conclusion. Well, yeah, you can get any study or anything you want. So I'm pretty excited about the RFK Jr. pick because he really is an example of somebody who has had, I say, an epistemological humility in his approach to Trump. You hear him talking about how he was essentially brainwashed into thinking Trump was some tyrannical dictator Nazi figure, just like how the mainstream media has been trying to brainwash the rest of the country. But when he got to know Trump, he's like, wait a minute, this isn't anything like I was told, and so this merger of Trump and RFK Jr. is probably one of the greatest and most fascinating political realignments in modern American politics that we've seen of late. And so I think that if RFK Jr. executes on his mission of going after big pharma and big agriculture for the purpose of trying to make Americans healthy again, that's his tagline, make Americans healthy again. I think that he will be very effective. Of course, from a conservative evangelical Christian perspective, the biggest concerns with somebody like RFK Jr. are his positions on abortion. And as the head of HHS in particular, that's a agency that has a lot of equities and oversight on abortion policy, abortion funding. When the Democrats are in charge, they turn on all the spigots and let it go to all the abortion providers, Planned Parenthood, etc. When the Republicans get in charge, they try to turn off all that spigots, stop that federal funding from flowing, crack down more seriously on abortion clinics that are, quite frankly, operating outside the law, endangering the lives of course, every abortion clinic endangers the lives of the unborn, but, all that stuff. But I've seen a real openness from what I've heard in the news and from what I've heard behind the scenes in Washington, D.C., that RFK Jr. is very happy to have staunch pro-life deputies at HHS. Now, they've only announced a deputy secretary so far, which the guy's name is maybe Jim O'Brien. I'm forgetting exactly what his name is, but he is somebody who's done a lot of work on research and medical innovations and pharmaceutical inventions looking for cures for cancer. So he's not coming out of your traditional pro-life world, but there's still plenty of spots left. I know RFK Jr. is open to that. I'm confident we'll get good pro-life people in there. And so, I'm cautiously optimistic, unlike other conservative evangelicals at like TGC and the ERLC and Mike Pence, who are just using this as an opportunity to virtue signal and dunk on Republicans for, quote unquote, selling out the pro-life movement, even though the Republicans, short of Donald Trump, have done nothing substantial to advance the pro-life movement over the last 20 years.
No, I agree with you. And we're going to be in a couple down the list here. We're going to be talking about Doge, and there's reports of Elon and Vivek saying we need to defund Planned Parenthood. So we might have a little clash of differences there too, even with RFK and what Doge is recommending. But with that being said too, the now infamous story of Trump letting RFK use his plane while RFK is suing him is one of my favorite stories, because it really just shows a person that can separate business and friendships. And I think if we had a little bit more of that in politics, instead of getting emotionally attached and emotionally angry about everything and holding grudges, it just shows a level of intelligence that I really enjoy in elected officials. Look, we can hash it out, disagree, not like each other in there on that policy, and then afterwards shake hands and let's go get a steak and talk about how we go back to battle again tomorrow. It really is a civilized way to rule. And I really like that story. That goes to your point of them having differences of opinion on things, but on this thing they align, and I think it'll be good for the American people. All right, let's move it on to a couple more here. The border czar. Is he an official nominee, Tom Homan, for the border czar? I think he is, isn't he? Or did I get that wrong?
Well, I believe he's going to work in the White House.
Okay.
So that's not a Senate confirmed position. I think but
Okay.
what I've seen is the phrase I've seen used is that he's going to be operational. So he's going to be in the White House, but in that position he has in the White House, he essentially is going to have purview and authority over, border operations at DHS, ICE, Customs and Border Patrol, etc., which is what you need. Somebody who can get his hands into all of those agencies that are responsible for enforcing our immigration laws. I mean, and on this one, there could not be a better pick. I mean, this is just 10 out of 10. This man loves America. He loves the American people who are having their lives destroyed by illegal immigration, by human trafficking, by drug trafficking in this country. And he wants to end it and protect his American citizens. And he's not messing around. I mean, you've seen him, these clips of him when he's asked that
machine. Yeah,
that perennial question that everyone thinks a gotcha is like, well, are you going to separate families? Because, as soon as we see somebody crying, we need to shred the Constitution and forget about our national sovereignty. And he just, ice in his veins, goes, well, families can be deported together. And they absolutely can be. And when we've seen this sort of resistance start to rise up in blue cities saying we're not going to work with immigrations and custom enforcement to turn over our illegal immigration population, and mayors saying we're happy to be arrested. Homan's like, yeah, okay, we'll arrest you and then we'll get you out of the way and then we'll do it. Right. I mean, This is a man on a mission, and him combined with Stephen Miller, who's going to be overseeing policy, a wide suite of policy, but also immigration as well. That's kind of Miller's main issue is immigration, American sovereignty and security. I mean, that combination, gives me a lot of confidence that mass deportations are coming and they're coming fast.
Yeah. And it's just, what a novel idea. A gentleman that just enforces the laws on the books. I mean, that's really what he's doing. And he knows them well. In that conversation with AOC, put her on her back heels. And he just states it. And I think, I agree with you. He's going to be a great pick. Pete Hegseth, Defense Secretary. I've got Ben Merkel coming on later this month to talk about how he shout out New St. Andrews College and how they're getting so much play right now, just from that one little clip. And I think I saw a clip earlier today, and it might have come out in the last day or two, of him just really pushing back and going, look, at anything that you're being lied to about the media, we're going to push back. We're going to stand with Trump. I mean, it doesn't look like he is, shirking away from any of the attention he's been getting over the last few weeks as soon as he was announced. What's your thoughts on Pete?
Well, I think Pete is a great pick. He is a war fighter, and so he's for the war fighters. And he recognizes that one of the most important things that we need in our military, at the Department of Defense, and all of our different service branches is this word that a lot of Americans don't, hear of or think about, but this is the right way to talk about, which is lethality. The point of our forces is to be able to provide, overwhelming lethal action when necessary to defend our homeland or to defeat our enemies abroad. But when over the last decade, you bring in increasing bureaucracy and then that bureaucracy goes woke and ridiculous, it impacts the readiness and the lethality and the morale in our war fighters. Recruitment is down. Young men don't want to come in. And on top of recruitment being down, thousands of patriotic American military members have been forcibly separated from their service because of their refusal to get an untested and unproven vaccine, which I believe that Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth are going to make right. So look, the guy, he has all the qualifications necessary for the job. And particularly one of the best qualifications is he's not in bed with the massive defense contractors. The man is coming from a more independent post, being sort of a media personality in many ways after his service in the military. And he's not backing down. It appears that Donald Trump is backing him to the hilt through this process so far. And the bottom line is the Senate Republicans that are opposing him, they're doing so sort of, I guarantee, out of personal interest, because they're concerned that if he gets in there, there will be real reforms at the Pentagon that kind of turn off the gravy train of the defense industrial complex and unnecessary wars around the world that put money in their pockets and money in their district. And so that's really what it comes comes down to. I've said it before. I'll say it again here for your listeners. Pete Hegseth is a man who's for the war fighters. You know, the establishment, the swamp is for the war mongers. And a lot of those swamp characters have an R next to the name in the Senate. And they're the ones who are fomenting this ridiculous campaign against him right now.
Yeah, no, you're so true. And when I talk to most Americans, they tell me, look, we're not necessarily anti-war. We want to defend this country, but it's can we audit the foreign aid a little bit? Can we audit the Pentagon a little bit? Know where our $4 trillion went missing? I mean, that's the real issue here. And I think it's a straw man when you have these leftists that go, oh, we're going to be invaded and we need money, or even the hot guys on the right too, of we just need to keep pumping all these billions and trillions of dollars unaccounted for. I like a little transparency there. I like a little budgetary oversight, and I think Pete will bring that to that position. All right, I'm going to lump these next two in order, and then we got one more. Kristi Noem, Secretary of Homeland Security, and Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, two very independent, strong female leaders, probably on opposite sides of the aisle on social issues, but at the same time, kind of independent in their own right. I know Kristi Noem, registered Republican, Tulsi now independent, but these two picks were kind of fun for me too, because the Tulsi kind of goes back to the RFK. Don't agree with everything, obviously, but in that specific role as a Director of National Intelligence, she was railing against this years before she ever came over to the independent side or supported Trump. So I see a track record before, you always get a little concerned when you see someone jump on late in the campaign and go, okay, are they hedging their bets? They think he's going to win. They want a position. This was something that Tulsi stood on, and even Kristi years before the whole Trump thing and the election got close. So what are your thoughts on those two picks?
Yeah, well, I'll take Kristi Noem briefly because I don't have too much to say about her, which is that, I think she's a fine pick. Again, I support Donald Trump's, assessment there. Her main job at the Department of Homeland Security is going to I'll say this, she's got a big job in front of her at the Department of Homeland Security. She's going to be overseeing, one of the main agencies responsible, the main agency responsible for ensuring that our border gets secured, that human and drug trafficking gets stopped, and that illegal immigration ends, mass deportations happen. So she's going to have to work hand in glove with Tom Homan, Stephen Miller, and many others throughout those different agencies, DHS, which has, Customs Border Patrol, and ICE in it. It's really interesting. DHS is kind of this sort of Frankenstein agency that grew up in the post 9/11 world that arguably is too big, oversees too many equities. There's arguments that could be made for spinning out ICE and CPB into their own thing, but we'll see where any of that goes. So I think she just needs to execute on mission on the Trump immigration agenda, and she'll be good. We'll see how that goes. For Tulsi Gabbard is a very interesting pick. She has been one who's had outside the box views on foreign policy and national defense for many years, views that seem to align more with Donald Trump and the America First movement in many ways. And because of that, of course, she's been smeared and attacked as sort of like a Kremlin stooge or a Russian plant. She's been put on a watch list for travel by the TSA, which is absurd. And so I think that she's a great pick for the office of Director of National Intelligence, because that role it's a coordinating role between, that's another post 9/11 sort of growth in the federal government to oversee information sharing amongst the various national security agencies, the FBI, the CIA, et cetera. And so I think she's a great pick for that role, and I think she'll do well there.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. This is what we're going to finish it up with. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, probably the most talked about, in the last 30 days. My thought and my question is, are they going to be able to be effective? We have Senator Rand Paul, who has introduced a bill, I think, for 6 or 8 continuous years of, hey, let's just, for every dollar we spend, cut 1 penny, and he can't even get out of committee, right? So what do we expect here out of these guys? Can they be successful at all and go, hey, let's be more efficient? And look at, I'm a locally elected official. I struggle with balancing giving the taxpayers every service they're due constitutionally versus overspending and wasting money, right? There's a balance there. You just can't go in and, hey, we cut everything. We have to be smart and intelligent about it. But do you think they'll be successful at all being able to cut? I mean, you start talking about purse strings with elected officials and departments, boy, it seems like it's a uphill battle. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. If anybody can do it, Elon Musk can do it, right? Let's just get that out of the way, right? Elon Musk is truly a revolutionary American character. He is the greatest inventive mind, one of the most driven individuals here in the 21st century, really sort of remaking this world in ways that we haven't seen before. He's got the money, he's got the backing, he's got the independence. So if anybody can get the job done, Elon Musk can get the job done. The question is, will he have the sort of the power to get it done in a government apparatus? And here, let me share a story that I heard from something that just happened in Washington, D.C. I think it was yesterday. Elon and Vivek were going around Capitol Hill, and they met with a bunch of, I think, House and Senate Republicans. And, at the end of it, everyone's like, yes, we love it. Let's do it. Doge, cut. And at the end of it, Chip Roy, who's a great representative from Texas, stands up and he's like, are you guys serious? Like, there's not been a massive government spending bill, an omnibus, a growth of the federal government that the vast majority of you in this room here haven't supported over the last decade. We have met the enemy and he is us. And so, whether or not they'll be able to succeed really depends on what cooperation they get from Congress, particularly from House Republicans and Senate Republicans, because they are, they're just as bad of actors in the growth of government and unnecessary and wasteful spending as the Democrats are. I mean, the swamp runs off the gravy train of taxpayer dollars. And so if the House and the Senate get behind them and work with them, if Trump gives them the authority to get it done, I believe they can get it done. But ultimately, because Doge is an extra governmental, idea and body, the real change is going to happen through law and through the executive branch office. So let me where they can certainly be successful is targeting things that the president can change via executive action at the agencies, even if it means just not spending money, right? This is something that's actually legally debated. This is crazy. I don't know if your listeners know this, but Congress appropriates, controls the purse strings, gives money to these executive branch agencies, and there's an interpretation under statute that they have to spend it all. They have to spend it all. They're legally obligated to spend everything that they're given. And other people like Russ Vogt say that's not the case. That's an innovation. That's a misinterpretation of the law. So even if at the end of the year, a bunch of agencies don't spend a lot of money and send it back to the Treasury, that would be a win. Maybe something Trump can oversee. But the real change will have to happen through law. And we'll see if there's the support for it. One of the reasons I think there might be the support for it is Elon's threat to get involved in primaries. So for sake of example here, if Doge writes sort of like a bill, if they come up with this great bill that's going to gut all these things and put it into statute, and then they get a sponsor in the House and a sponsor in the Senate, and they force it forward on votes, then if Republicans oppose it, they should live in fear for being primaried and kicked out of office because they didn't support what they said they supported. So that's really where all of this will come to a head.
So you kind of bring up a point that I wanted to ask you, William, because I think you have experience in this. You were in the private sector, you were in the public sector, or the politics. On the list of everyone we just went over too, sometimes there can be lost in translation going from the private sector and going, look, I'm the boss, I can make these changes, I can clean out Twitter in Elon's case or whatever. And then you get into the political realm and you go, oh, there's laws and there's politics and there's this gang that, this group that wants against this group. And it's a totally different thing. And my biggest concern is anyone coming from the private sector going into the political arena, there can sometimes be a big learning curve and adjustment, but it sounds like Elon in his case, and I don't know about the rest on this list that haven't held any type of political position and are now going into that, sounds like he's already understanding the political game a little bit. Look at if you don't do this, then this will happen. I mean, it is different than just being the guy in charge and being able to make demands and cuts and, hey, it's my business and I can do it. It's very different when you have to get 100 senators or 535 House members or a majority of those in either chamber on board for bills and things like that. Do you think a lot of these guys and girls on this list will be able to translate into the political world smoothly, or do you think there's going to be a learning curve, or do you think it'll be different for all of them?
Yeah, I think this is again where who Elon Musk is really comes into play, because for anybody else, even say like your most seasoned executive from the business world who's used to having his own way. He gets involved in the government machine, and then he has a whole table of people telling him he can't do it this way. And then that guy probably, 99.99% of people like that say, oh, okay, well, they reference one law or one statute or one, sort of like one example from the past. And then they just fold and say, okay, we can't do it like that. Elon Musk is going to sit there and say, why? Why can't we do it like that? Yes, we can. No, that's not an answer. You come back in here and you tell me how we get it done. That's who Elon Musk has proven himself to be. And so I think just that force of will and that drive for change can help overcome sort of what you're talking about here, the learning curve, because actually what we want him to not learn on that curve. We do not want Elon to start thinking like a bureaucrat, to start acting like a bureaucrat, to start, bowing to suits, citing precedent at him. We just want him in there saying, no, get it done, make it happen. What'd you accomplish this week? What did you accomplish this week? Make it happen. I think that sort of force of will is really what gives me hope it'll be successful.
Yeah. All right. Last question as we put bookends on this. What do you think a second Trump term is going to look like? Are we going to see kind of something of the first term? Are we going to see an extension of that? Are we going to see maybe leading more conservatively? You think it's going to be more all out? Let's get accomplished what we think we need to get accomplished in this 4 years. Do you even think that they'll be thinking ahead and going, well, let's make sure we make some decisions that set up maybe like a Vance for a 28 run? Like, what are your thoughts as someone who's been in politics, been in the administration before, understand that world? Give us kind of your professional and educated opinion on that.
Yeah, bottom line is I don't think this is going to be anything like the first Trump term. And I mean that positively. The political environment and the situation in America has changed so drastically, even the last 8 years. When Trump took office at the start of 2017, we had no idea just how bad things really were. But Donald Trump acted like this magnet, like this salve, exposing all these absolutely corrupt and wretched actors at the FBI, at the CIA, in our agencies. Then we had COVID and this massive corruption scheme, and all these lies foisted on the American people. Everything that's been done to persecute and target Trump with lawfare, the way that's ramped up on normal, average American citizens. And then, of course, under the last 4 years of the Biden administration, the way the border's been absolutely thrown open. Immigration was an important thing that Trump ran on and won on in 2016, but that issue's been kicked up by multiple degrees of importance right now. So I think that it's just going to look really different, man, and it's going to look good. It's going to, I think, really look like smash mouth warfare against the deep state and against all of these issues that are destroying our country and, causing us to lose hope in what it means to live in America, to have a country worth growing up in and giving to our children. And so I have confidence it's going to be aggressive. It's going to be hard hitting nonstop. And really what all these picks we're talking through, and as they fill out their agencies, Trump has learned who the bad guys are, who the good guys are, and what it means to have loyalists implementing his agenda. This is a massive undertaking. And I've said this on a couple other podcasts, is that if Trump is successful, it is going to cause the greatest screeching and gnashing of teeth we've ever seen in the media before. They're going to call him a tyrant over and over again. They're going to say day after day, we're going to hear unconstitutional, being a dictator. And, my message to everybody is don't flinch, because what's happening here fundamentally is they're going to call it a revolution, but it's not a revolution. It's a counter revolution. It's a return to form, because so much has been built up on our American system that shouldn't be there, that when you fight to destroy the deep state, when you fight to protect American sovereignty and national interests, when you fight on behalf of the forgotten man in America, they're essentially going to call you a political terrorist when you're the one who has the Constitution on your side. So if Trump has the grit to fight through this, it's going to be fireworks. And at the end of the day, when the smoke clears, it's going to be awesome. And I think in terms of setting stuff up for 2028, the only thing that really matters here is success. Success on the Trump agenda will set J.D. Vance up for 2028 better than anything else.
Yeah. Man, you got me hyped up. I love it. William Wolfe, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, man. Give us where people can follow you at, where they can get a hold of you on socials. Throw it out there for the people.
Yeah, you can find me on X at William_E_Wolfe with an E. And then, I work at the Center for Baptist Leadership. So make sure to follow us on X at Baptist Leader. Subscribe to our podcast, the Center for Baptist Leadership podcast, on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere else you can find that.
Yeah, and I'm not just saying it because he's sitting in front of me, guys. Make sure you go follow him on socials. There are some days where if something comes out, I will literally just type in his name in Twitter, X, and see what his opinion is first, just so I can make sure that I'm correct about my opinion, because it's really that good. William, thanks so much for being here, brother. Really appreciate you. We're going to link up everything down below, guys, so you can click on his name, click on his podcast. Make sure you go follow him. Pause this, go do that now, then come back. Well worth it. William, thanks for being here, brother.
Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, no problem. Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of Dead Men Walking Podcast. As always, you can find us on socials, Dead Men Walking Podcast. Check out more about us at dmwpodcast.com. Go get some of that snarky merch that we have up there. We have the Wine 'em, Dine 'em, Romans 9 'em mugs. We've got the How About You Shut Up and Let That Be Your Wisdom, Job 13:5. Sometimes you just got to quote scripture to the pagans, even if they don't like it. That's how you support the show. We've got stuff coming up for the new year. We're going to be hosting some conferences, be at conferences. We'll let you know about it. And as always, remember, the chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. God bless.
Be sure to check us out at dmwpodcast.com, where you can purchase the best and snarkiest merch on the internet, support the show, and leave us a review or message. Dead Men Walking can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Dead Men Walking Podcast, and on Twitter X at Real DMW Podcast. The Dead Men Walking Podcast is part of the Fight Laugh Feast Network. For exclusive show content, be sure to download the Pub TV app and become a member. If you're a business that needs to reach hundreds of thousands of potential customers in your demographic, podcast advertising might be for you. Send all inquiries to deadmenwalkingpodcast@gmail.com.
None your biscuits.